Go ahead, does anyone have their lights on? Okay, all right. Can you hear me? Okay. Good evening, we are calling.
Is that one on in the middle? Did anybody put the mic on in the middle? Good.
All right, we're calling back to session after closed session. We do have some items to report out in closed session on motion by Trustee Marcella O'Brien and seconded by Trustee Melendez. The board voted 4-0 to appoint Joseph Gengler as Director of Information and Educational Technology beginning October 3rd, 2022. And then we will have a time to do that introduction here coming up. But if you will please stand and join with me on the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, again?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, before we get going tonight, welcome, and if there are any folks here who would like to speak on one of the agenda items or would like to speak during public comments, please fill out a card and place that at the end of the table in the basket. Do we have any changes to our agenda this evening?
Yes, we inadvertently forgot to put correspondence on. So we added correspondence after public comment, I believe, and which changed after public comment, which changed the numbering sequence. That was added as number 14 and bumped everything down one number from there.
All right, seeing those changes, do we have a motion for approval of tonight's agenda?
Move to approve.
Second. Jim votes?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. All right, item number 7 is approval of the regular meeting minutes of August 22nd, 2022. Are there any board questions? Public comment? I will bring it back to the board for approval.
Move to approve the regular meeting minutes of August 22nd, 2022.
I'll second. Student vote? Aye. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. Number 19 is introduction of our new, number 8. Introduction of our new hire, and I'll pass that on to Dr. Cohen.
All right. It gives me great pleasure this evening to introduce you to Joe Gengler as our new Director of Information and Educational Technology. Joe earned a bachelor's degree in business administration with a concentration in management of information systems and a master's in business administration from Cal State Sacramento. He comes to us from Antioch Unified School District, where he has worked for the past 6 years, most recently in the role of Technology Director, leading a technology department that serves 24 schools and 15,000 students. His current supervisor shared that he is well versed in technology and a good planner, problem solver, and project manager. Prior to Antioch, he worked as an IT services manager in Sacramento for 7 years. Joe is a graduate of Antioch High School and grew up in the Antioch community, where both of his parents and his sister were educators. However, since moving back to the East Bay, he and his wife have made Martinez. He looks forward to serving his new community and making the difference with the education of his neighbor's children. I introduce to you, Joe Gengler.
fixing all of this soon.
Thank you, and I'm happy to be here, and thank you for the introduction, Scott. My wife and I are excited, as well as me, just to be here at Martinez. As you are aware, we are residents here at Martinez, and I'm really excited to contribute on the success of this district and helping students learn and supporting our staff. So I look forward to starting here in a couple weeks and lending whatever I can to help the community. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Do you want to introduce your guest?
Oh, yes. How rude me. This is my wife, Cheyenne Engler, right here. She is actually a business owner here in Martinez as well. So we have firm roots here. And then my father, Bob Sanchez, who is a longtime educator, and my mom, Colleen Sanchez, who's also a longtime educator at AM. So, thank you.
All right, item number 9 tonight is comments from our student representative.
The school reports for the September 12, 2022 regular board meeting are as follows. Los Juntos. Thank you to all the families who came back to back to school. It was great to see so many families engaged in what's to come in the school year. We had our first PTA meeting and had a great turn. It's still not too late to join the Los Juntos PTA. Please see our website to sign up. A huge thank you to MRC for the generous donation to STEAM learning at Los Juntos. MEF Run is on Saturday, September 24th. Don't forget to contact your teacher for parent-teacher conferences in the first week of October. John Muir, thank you to all of our families that attended back to school night and to our PTA that provided dinner for our teachers and food trucks for our families. We had an overwhelming amount of volunteers sign up for our PTA organized event. Please continue to check the PTA Facebook and Instagram for upcoming events and ways to volunteer. Today was our first in-person assembly. The students were able to experience juggling, magic, and comedy while learning about water conservation. Today, we celebrated students using PBIS/character count stickers that they earned throughout the week when they are demonstrating the character trait of the month, which is kindness, for the month of September. Every Friday is Bubble, Dance, and Chalk Day at John Muir during lunch. The library will open for a lunch bunch on Friday, September 16th. PBIS/character counts virtual assembly is on September 12th. Street Smarts Assembly is on September 13th. John Sweat. We had an awesome back to school night where many parents sat at their child's classroom desk for the first time. John Sweat students had a super duper Roadrunner dash on Friday where they ran laps to support the PTA. Kindergarten and TK are immersed in apples. Families sent in many apples for us to count. Make patterns with and sort by attribute. Cut open to learn about the parts of the apple, and later in the month taste test different varieties and make applesauce with them. We are learning about the nonfiction aspects of apples, life cycle, and parts of an apple, in addition to the folktale aspect, like honoring Johnny Appleseed's birthday, and the fiction aspect of Dr. Seuss's 10 apples up on top. Apples, apples, and more apples in TK and kindergarten. Virtual PTA meeting is on Tuesday at 7 o'clock. Morello Park. Back to school night was well attended and had wonderful, informative presentations by our teachers. Our PTA made a membership goal of 250. As of August 31st, we have 269 PTA members signed up, which is more than we had all of last year. Wonderful donation of Sabano drums, hand drums, and xylophones from the Good Neighbor Foundation. We are grateful for the partnership and truly appreciate the support of music at Morello Park. Since we met our PTA membership goal, the classroom with the greatest number of members will be silly stringing the principal. Plus, the entire student body will get a prize from Mrs. De La May. Martinez Junior High. Thank you to all our Bullpup families that attended back to school night. It was great to see our campus bustling, parent/guardians engaging with our teachers, and a PTSA table with tons of support for our school. Congratulations to our Bull Pups on their first volleyball game of the season. Academic success is up and running 5 days a week at MJHS. Students can join the counselor and peer tutors Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at lunch, and Tuesday and Thursday before school in A113. Cross-country practice started today, and we're looking forward to seeing our Bull Pups on the course. Join us on September 19th for our first session of our Parents Webinar Series, Bull Pup 101, via Zoom at 7 p.m. PTSA meeting is on September 20th at 6 p.m. in the staff lounge. Makeup Picture Day is on September 27th. Alhambra High School. Thank you to all the families that were able to attend our back to school night. Many thanks to the teachers for their engaging presentations, support staff, the band for playing for families as they arrive, and the cheerleaders for guiding families around campus. Digital Hall Pass pilot seems to be going well, and will be extending this to all teachers by the progress report. Admin is working with various groups to open up on-campus community service opportunities to help seniors meet the graduation requirements. Homecoming and graduation preparation is in full swing. Students should order their cap and gown if they have not already. Athletics booster meeting is on Tuesday, September 13th from 7 to 8 p.m. PTSA meeting with admin meet and greet is on Wednesday, September 14th from 7:15 to 7:45. We are still trying to meet our membership goal of 500 members by the end of October. SSC meeting on Thursday, September 15th is from 4 to 5 p.m. Our college and career specialist has set up multiple college fairs. College Info Night for class of 2023 and 2024 is on September 28th from 6:15 to 7:15. Athletics teams are doing well. Players on fall sports team collectively support each other by showing up to games and rooting for each other. Vicente Martinez and Brioni's Independence Day. Vicente hosted a successful back-to-school night. We appreciate all of the family support we received at this event. Vicente students are enjoying hands-on science labs this school year. Students are excited about Yoga Club, Beat First, and Psychology Club starting next week. SSC meeting is scheduled for October 5th at 2:15. Martinez Adult Education. Orientation for post-middle 3 was held on Wednesday, September 7th. This is the first time in several years, and the class will begin at the end of September. We have a new U.S. citizen. Congratulations, Garciela Gonzalez. She passed her citizenship test on August 12th. Pharmacy Technician Program orientation will be held on Thursday, September 15th at 6:00 p.m. in room 11. The first cohort of students will start on Monday, September 26th. ISET high school equivalency testing resumes this month, and the first testing will be Saturday, September 17th. Thank you.
Thanks, Yomi. Anything you want to add about what you're doing, what you're observing going on in the high school?
I want to congratulate the varsity water polo team for winning the Newburgh Memorial Tournament. The girls water polo team, they got first place. And we also have a home game for JV and varsity football team this upcoming Friday. And we are also starting to decorate floats and get that going with float parties for homecoming. And the Bull Pup, the Martinez Junior High band will be joining us Friday as well. And we are also announcing homecoming court at the end of Friday's game.
All right, thank you. All right, so number 10 is employee organization reports. Do you have any reports, Mike?
Good evening. First, I'd like to really echo a lot of what Yomi reported about our successful back to school nights. We really were very energized and excited to be back in person for such an important event, to be able to connect with our families. And we're really grateful to our families for coming out and showing a really strong numbers with those back to school events. And it was just very encouraging as teachers are starting to finally feel like we're getting our head above water after the last couple of crazy years. That was a really nice little back to normalcy piece. We're excited about movement on our bond measure coming up. I know that's something that we're all supporting. We're posting it on our website, our Facebook posting should be like any minute now, and continuing to try to build that volunteer list for those campaign events and walking the precincts and knocking on doors. I know that the board was somewhat concerned in the process of debating and discussing about whether or not to go forward with the bond measure. There was some concern over whether the voters really would support it as strongly as they have in the past. We've got a result of, we've got 3 beautiful new elementary schools as a result of the last bond measure, and we're not promising brand new schools again with this next bond measure. It's not quite as appealing, as sexy, it's not as shiny and new. We all know that it's the guts of the schools, those inner workings, the infrastructure, the things that are less showy that are really needing the work now. So I am more than happy to help with those talking points as a result of last week's heat wave. I'm sure a lot of our parents may understand that while our HVAC systems were definitely working overtime, maybe some of those spaces were not quite 72 or 75, but maybe on the 80-degree range. What they probably don't know is that there still are spaces in our schools that have no HVAC at all, and those temperatures were reaching 80. Well, I say 85, that was actually the last reading from just the first couple of normal weeks of hot, where our spaces in the PE locker rooms, the offices, the hallways, the mat rooms, the weight rooms, the gym, those were all in the 85-degree range a couple of weeks ago during just our normal hot. Didn't get any temperatures from last week, but you can imagine. We even had to spend Tuesday, sadly enough, hard to admit as a PE teacher, in the PB in the air conditioning on Tuesday because administration obviously didn't want us outside with our PE activities. That was advised across the areas, but our indoor spaces were no better. So just again, if you're struggling for talking points as we're knocking on those doors and trying to convince our voters the importance of that infrastructure, that's certainly one that's, I hope, very tangible and one that I can speak to very much. And the list goes on, the plumbing, you name it. We've got on top of all that heat, there's one water fountain up at the top field, and it's actually not working at the moment. There's one water fountain. I think you've all seen it and passed it on the way to a football game. Probably not something you really want to. Most of the kids drink out of the hose about 5 feet away. So there's just a lot of good basic needs that are necessary. And again, as you're looking for talking points while we're talking to our community, we'll be happy to help provide some of those. And we'll be out there with you. So, thank you.
Any other board report? Okay. Is there anyone here tonight from PTA? I'm seeing none. We'll move on to item number 12, which is the staff board acknowledgements, announcements, and reports. First, is there anyone on the board who has any announcements, reports they'd like to share?
Yes, we had the city liaison meeting on August 25th, which I thought was a really good success. We had it was the interim police chief, interim city engineer, interim city manager, 2 of the city council members. But it was a really good talk. Opened up a lot of conversation about safety, security, police enforcement, working around the community and the schools. We talked about some of the facilities, the upcoming changes to Morello. And so there's kind of a scratch the surface on items that overlap between the district and the city, but it was very, I think, a good start of communication between the 2 agencies. So that was it.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
So we have on September 24th, the 20th anniversary MRC MEF Run for Education. So I know lots of folks have participated in lots of years. So this marks the 20th year, if you can believe it. And there's still time to run. There's to register to run. There's also still time to volunteer. Both of those links can be found on martinezedfoundation.org. and as well as various social media outlets. And I think that we have been sending those links out to our principals as well for newsletters. So I'll let Helen maybe speak to that a little bit more, but we're also looking for adult volunteers. It's kind of a fun and low level of commitment way to volunteer in your community. It's just a couple of hours and you monitor a section of the course and you cheer walkers and runners on. And so it's always good to see everyone out there, and we hope that lots of people can participate, including kids and dogs and just bring the whole family.
Is there gonna be the family fun night the night before?
No, that's still on hold. It went away COVID year, and then we did a virtual run, and it hasn't quite made its way back, but hopefully next year.
Great, thank you.
Do you know why it switched from Sunday to Saturday?
Yes, so yeah, that's a good point. It is Saturday. It has historically been Sundays, at least for the last several years. There were some challenges with farmers market, and getting the farmers market, of course, over the years has grown into a really also wonderful community event every Sunday. And so it has gotten harder and harder for them to move down into side streets. So we sort of jointly decided, let's make it easy for everyone and just move it to Saturday. So Saturday, not Sunday. If you wake up on Sunday, you will have missed the race.
But you can make it to farmers market.
Yes, you
Okay, their next item is 12.1, which is their superintendent's report.
Okay, so I have to say Friday night's football game, the overall student behavior was vastly improved. Thank you to all the students and their families for their support and listening. It made an enjoyable game for everyone. We have some new categorical pots of money that I mentioned at the budget time. And just so I wanted it out there that we're going to be sharing that, providing each side with some discretionary dollars for the purpose of replacing equipment and instructional materials such as PE and music, things that we don't normally get funded in our yearly little tiny supply budget of a couple $100 per teacher. The Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant will require a plan from the site administration, but there will be support for these plans coming from our second block. The MUSD COVID plan was updated last week. Thank you, Carolyn, with the new guidance from the Contra Costa Health Services Department, which changes what the California Department of Health recommendation was of testing after 5 days to return to school. It used to be recommended, it is recommended by the Department of Health, but the Contra Costa Health Services changes it to a must test before returning, although it's not required to turn in the proof before they come back. So we're working with Chartwells in support of them. That's our food service company. In support of them providing additional support for Brook as soon as possible. The numbers of the meals we're serving, all of our elementary are back up to where they were in previous years. The high school and the junior high are a little bit behind, but she's in need of some managerial assistance, which will increase our contract a bit, but it's well worth it with the amount of food and quality of the food that we are able to put out. Can only get better with more assistance. So SBAC data, although embargoed, which means we're not allowed to release it publicly, was shared with our administration so plans can begin for intervention and support. Admin will receive PD on how to drill down on the results and how to link them directly to the standards over the course of the next month or two. The MEF run will be held on Saturday. Please support Martinez schools by attending or volunteering. I did send I think we have a link I sent the link for volunteers out to principals this morning when I received it over the weekend. So if any teachers or staff members are listening and you haven't seen that link, please talk to your site administrator. The Contra Costa County Teacher of the Year celebration will be held on the 22nd at 6 p.m. at the Lesher Theater. Jamie Nunez will be honored for her work with Los Angeles special education students. I'd like to give a shout out to Martinez PD. Even with their struggle in hiring and their shortage of staff, I think the last we heard it was 3 officers on the day shift. their response time and their support to any incident we call them for has been truly amazing. And I wanted just to thank them for all their support for the opening of the school year. I've been really impressed with their engagement with the school district. So our Martinez Unified School District bond, Measure K, there is a link to sign up for volunteers on the website as well. And I believe we sent the link to our labor partners to pass out. So please spread the word. We're looking for volunteers to help support the measure. That's what I have tonight.
All right, thank you. Item number 13 is public comments. Under Government Code Section 549, 54.3, members of the public have the right to address the board on any matter within the board's jurisdiction. However, the board may not take any action on non-agenda items. All speakers will be allowed 3 minutes to address the board with 20 minutes total. Are there any speaker cards this evening? Is there anyone here who would like to speak under public comments? Right, seeing none, we will also take the additional allocation of time at the end of our meeting. It will not be required. Item number 14 is correspondence. Is there correspondence to share this evening?
Yes, the board received a letter from community member Steve Malingy, and I'd like to take a moment to read his thoughts to the board and to the community. Dear board, the tragic deaths of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor somehow shook many into denouncing racism and working towards equity. I have seen our school district actively engaging staff and parents through Dr. Watson's workshops on how to become an anti-racist, although I wish there had been more participation. The hiring of Ms. LeBeau and Ms. Emmendorfer as principals may not sound impressive to some, but for me as a person of color, it is a giant step in the right direction. I wish them and all their colleagues a successful year at all levels of their duties. The city too has decided not to stay on the sideline of change. Over a year ago, it created an anti-racism and discrimination and pro-inclusion and equity ARDPE task force. I know it's a mouth-torturing name, but I am so honored to be a member. Things are happening and we would like to invite the school districts into further collaboration. We have launched a 5-minute survey to the attention of all residents of the city of Martinez. In a nutshell, we'd like to know what people think of their experiences living and or working in Martinez, especially in terms of accessing city services. Please help us encourage all stakeholders to take the survey so the city can get a large enough sample to better assess areas of improvement. The survey is available on the city's website by link or by QR code. Just search ARDPIE Task Force and scroll down. They provide the link there. And then as a heads up, in the coming weeks, there will be outdoor town hall meetings in various locations of Martinez where people could come and share ideas, give feedback, etc., with the sole purpose of making our city a more welcoming place for everyone. Finally, the ARDPIE Task Force meets every 4th Tuesday at 7 p.m. We encourage everyone to join in. There's a lot to learn and ideas to share. Again, go to the city's website and search ARDPIE Task Force to get all the information. I am grateful for the work the board, the administration, and the teachers have been doing, especially through the unprecedented last 2 years, and I hope for better to come.
Are there any other correspondence?
That's it. Thank you.
Number 15 is consent calendar. Are there any changes to our consent calendar?
No changes.
Any more questions? Public comments? Oh, you do have a question.
Not so much a question as if I could ask Helen and Janelle, two separate items, just kind of because they're large dollar items or kind of magnitude, I don't want to glaze over them. If you can explain to the board or to the community the benefits of the Seneca Family of Agencies aspect, and if Helen would identify the differences between the Rite-Aid School and Woodbridge.
Okay.
Or Renee, sorry.
pleasure. Item 2E is Seneca Family and Agencies MOU, and this is to continue our counseling enhanced classroom at Alhambra High School. That's been in operation for several years now. This MOU provides for the educational component of our program. That classroom is staffed with Seneca hired staff members. And so the dollar amount there you see provides for the teacher, the program supervisor, the therapist, the behaviors specialists that staff the classroom that we have 12 students currently enrolled in. And if they were not able to attend that program, they would be displaced into programs outside our district at a much higher cost.
Right.
So Right at School is an agency that's gonna help us with our expanded learning opportunities program, the ELOP. And it's gonna help at all 4 elementary schools, so John Sweat, John Muir, Las Juntas, Morella Park, and as well as Martinez Junior High, 6th grade students. So it's after school, and as you remember, it's a 9-hour day with 30 intercession days as well. So this company will help support with outreach. They have their own teachers, and they're on site, so it'll help alleviate some of the all of the background and outreach, and so they'll be there to assist me in all of that. And we're gonna be starting that in January after the holiday break.
And the Woodbridge contracts, these 2 particular Woodbridge contracts are property use contracts. One of them is the land lease, and the other one is the for Las Juntas, which we now collect a monthly rent.
Thank you.
Any other more questions? We'll open it up for public comment. Seeing none, this is an action item. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Student vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. 16.1 is the adoption of resolution number 2023-05, revision of authorized signatures. This is an action item presented by Superintendent Rossi.
So each year, usually at the organization of the board, we do an assurance for signatures of the board members and the district office members who are allowed to sign as designees or representatives of the board. As the person in charge of finance, I was signing for several years, but now that we have hired mid-year, so to say, a new CEO, he needs to take over the responsibility of contracts. So we're bringing it forth tonight to add Andrew Cannon as a signer for the district.
More questions? Public comment? All right, it's an action item. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Or, I guess that's, spell it out. Adopt the resolution number 2023-05, revision of authorized signatures.
Second.
Student vote?
Aye.
Full board, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. 16.2 is review and adoption of resolution 2023-06 regarding the GAM limit for the 2022-23 school year. And another action item presented by Superintendent Rossi.
So each year, we present a resolution that identifies our annual appropriations limit for the preceding year. It also establishes limits on the available growth in government spending for next year. Staff is requesting the board adopt the 22-23 GAM limit as presented.
More questions? Public comments? We'll bring it back. Do we have a motion?
Sorry. I move to approve item 16.2 to adopt the GAN limit.
Second.
Student vote?
Aye.
Full board, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carried. 16.3 is approval of the 2021-22 unaudited actuals. Another action item presented by Superintendent Rossi.
I want you all to remember, all these will be going to Mr. Cannon very shortly. So you do not have to do both the superintendent and the CEO job. Okay. So thank you. You're gonna have to scroll because we don't know where the clicker is. So, another technology failure today. So go ahead and change. Okay. So each year, the district prepares an unaudited actual statement, which is an end of the year financial statement showing exactly what our revenues and our expenditures were for the fiscal year 21-22. We calculate every fund and we look at what's been unspent, what's in reserves, and we carry forward to the next year what we're able to. The auditors that we hire, Christy White, they use this document to prepare the official audit report. And what it really does is takes a look at our estimated actuals from June. If you remember when I presented the budget, I also at the same time presented the estimated actuals, what I thought we would be spending based upon our numbers at that time. And so we compare that estimate to what the reality is. The mouse.
It works.
Okay, so we're gonna start with revenue, and revenue is broken down into two different types. There's unrestricted and there's restricted. So this here is the estimated versus unaudited actuals for our unrestricted money, which is our general fund money. You can see the types of revenue, the LCFF, the federal, the state, the local, and the total. So when I presented the estimated actuals in June, you can read down the column on the left compared to what the actual closing numbers were. And you can see we received a tiny bit less in our LCFF. Our federal was pretty much straight across the board because when you receive federal money, it's usually restricted. The state, we received a little bit more than we expected, and local more, for a total of $236,303 more. So we were pretty darn close in our estimated actuals. Now for the restricted side of the house. Okay. So same types of revenue, the LCFF, federal, state, and local. Okay. You take a look at our estimated actuals. Here we have a little bit more of a difference, but overall it's still the same. We were a little lower in our LCFF than what we thought in our federal, but we did receive a little bit more from the state, actually quite a bit more from the state than we thought we were going to get, which kind of made up for the lack of local, federal, and LCFF for a difference of about $450,000 on our restricted side. So when I put them together, here you can see that we have a difference of $685,000 on the plus side. So we ended up having just shy of $750,000 more than we thought we would have. Then we take a look at our expenses. These are the unrestricted. Okay, we broke it down into salaries, both kinds, the benefits, and benefits are not just health and welfare benefits, they're the payroll taxes. The STRS, the PERS, the FICA and all that go into that category. Our books and supplies, our services and other operating expenses, what we put out for capital outlay, we didn't have any of that. And then our other outgoing transfers of costs are usually our special ed transportation, and then our total expenditures. So pretty much our salaries came in a little bit more. And so as did benefits, which they should. Our books and supplies were about $100,000 less. And then our special ed dollars that were taken out were a little bit more. So overall, we had a total expenditure difference. We spent $386,000 more than I thought we would at the estimated actuals. And in the restricted, we spent $1.35 million less than what I thought we were going to spend. And those were our restricted pots of money that we put aside that we received for COVID. Most of them were, so we were supposed to hire a reading specialist and a math specialist and a wellness coordinator. All of those things that we budgeted for that we couldn't fill for staffing, that those are in here. Those take up 335, 435, so about 500,000 or more of that money is just that alone. Our other services and operating expenses. So a lot of times you put in a contract for X amount of dollars and you don't use it all. A lot of this could be from either special ed costs that we predicted maybe someone was in an NPS and came back from an NPS, or it could be that we put $50,000 on a professional development contract, and because we had no subs last year, we might have canceled that contract and not have paid out as much. So that's why you see the difference. But the money does, the restricted money has to be used for specific purposes and that'll be carried over. So altogether, our expenditures were just under $1 million less. When you put both the unrestricted and restricted together. Okay. Components of ending fund balances. So we have quite a bit over $1 million worth of restricted money left over, and this is where it is. So in our expanded learning opportunities, we have a bank of $392,000 that'll carry over, and that's going to support the program Renee just put together here. Educator effectiveness is a grant that we received last year, and I believe it goes 5 years for professional development type work and expenses. Lottery instructional materials is a textbook account that's restricted to textbook account. There's Janelle got 2 pots of money for special education, or 3 pots, and that's what's left over there for alternative dispute. These are not your regular ed expenses, they're different expenses. Your regular special ed expenses. Kitchen, we got $25,000 for infrastructure. We're going to get more this year, but we've already spent that in the new grab and go refrigeration units for the high school. They just haven't come, they're on their way. And just other little pots of money that we have left over from COVID. Go ahead, here's the rest. So altogether, we have a restricted balance for our restricted money of $2.9 million, which right now Andy is working feverishly on trying to put everything out so at cabinet level we can start to take a look at a plan to spend the rest of the restricted dollars, and then of course we'll meet with our labor partners as we did last year and bring it to the board to talk about. So this is an overall summary of where we ended up for our Fund 01, which are unrestricted or our general fund. So our revenue was a little higher, our expenses were a little bit less. We had a 1.6 excess, which is a decrease in our deficit spending. We went from $3 million where I thought we would be in deficit spending to 1.3, which each year we do as we collapse our purchase orders and so on and so forth. Our ending balance was a little bit higher, obviously. Our restricted reserves were higher, and our reserve for uncertain, that's our 3% required reserve for the year, was up a little bit. Was up a little bit, and the ending balance, after taking all of those other expenses into account, was just a tad bit lower. Our other funds, we have an adult education fund that was very healthy at the end of last year. We have the ASB accounts for the Alhambra and Martinez Junior High. Our cafeteria fund, and I want this date recorded in history because we actually have a balance in our cafeteria fund, which is absolutely remarkable because we usually pay into cafeteria fund every year for as long as I've worked for this district, but with the meal service the way it is and the way things are structured and the amount of kids that are eating and the reimbursement, it's actually worked well for us, which is why we're able to take on someone to help from Chartwell's, increase that contract a little bit and fix up some of our kitchens that badly need it and get extra help if we need it. So we're working on that. Andy's working on that with us right now. Deferred maintenance we have not contributed to in years, so it remains a zero. The $690,000 is the money that was put away years ago by Dan White and Tim Reno for post post-employment benefits, should we ever need to cover, if we don't have enough money to cover our retirees' benefits, we have this pot of money to draw from. It sits and makes interest every year. We try not to touch it. The building fund, that's our bond money for our elementary schools, still has 57 million. And capital facilities, that is our developer fees. We took a chunk of $1 million out of there for Las Puntas. Our facilities fund, now there's 9 million in there, but we know that several million of that money is already earmarked for our Measure R projects. And then our Fund 40 is the money that is left over sales from, I think, the property, Mountain View property, because that's the only thing that has ever gone into there. And then our bond interest redemption, meaning that we collected that much to pay the next section of bonds. Okay, that is our unaudited actuals for the years. Are there any questions?
I have one. For the building fund, the 57 million.
Yeah.
Just because we are going out for this bond, that is, I just want to be really clear, that's money that we have at the moment, but is already projects that are happening.
Yes. A lot of the 9 million right there, most of the 9 million and the building fund, the 57 million are spent on the Measure R projects, which are the 4 elementary schools, for the most part. There was a little bit of the junior high and a little bit of the PP.
Can you explain the difference between the facilities fund and the deferred maintenance?
The facilities fund, Fund 35, is money that we're getting that's reimbursing us for modernization from the state. So when we do a project, so for instance, John Sweat, we need to modernize John Sweat. Their portables are too old. The portables and stuff are too old. And the state will give you money to upgrade or modernize or replace those, and it's a calculated formula that we have an agency figure out for us, and they state reimburses us money for those projects. That money goes into facilities fund, and it can only be used on facilities. So technically for the project for which it was given, but we've already used other money for that project, so it's reimbursing us in that pot. So it's just taking place. So it's facilities only. Deferred maintenance is money that the board used to put away each year from the general fund, take a chunk of money in there, and to do deferred maintenance projects like the striping of the parking lots and the roofs and the different things like that. But that has been depleted. Since I got here, it had $14,000 in it, and that went the first year on summer projects. And because we've been in budget reductions and we've had the bonds, the residual Measure K from the last 2 bonds ago, and then the Measure R to replace the elementary schools, which are our oldest schools and have the most problems. We didn't need to, in our reductions, we took that as a reduction. We're not putting $150,000 a year into there because we use that $150,000 to save jobs.
So that understanding, it makes sense that now we have 3 brand new schools that we're gonna wanna start, and obviously going after more, we're gonna start dedicating money to that fund. Do we have an estimation of how much that should be, how much of the budget or how many dollars should be going to that to maintain the schools that we've just built and keep them in good working order for as long as possible?
Yeah, so initially, I think for a long period of time, it's always 150,000 they were putting in. And then when the budget, shortly after I got on the board, they were making reductions, and then I think we lessened it to 70,000. And then when we passed Measure R was when we stopped funding it at all. And that was also because we were taking $500,000 off every year on our budget, just trying to stop deficit spending. I think, just speaking from being involved with it with the past board, we had always envisioned the time in the future where we would have, the board would consider going back to the 150,000. And so that would be, my recommendation is now's probably the time, and maybe you wanna maybe we wanna see what happens with the next, the next bond, but there's money available now to start, to put money in, and you're not getting rid of multiple people and trying to justify a rainy day fund. So I would definitely think this is something that we wanna look at building back into our yearly budget.
For sure, that's definitely my question. We have a construction manager that's assigned to delivering these projects in their spare time. They can identify or develop a maintenance cost per structure, because we're gonna have filters, we're gonna have pumps, we're gonna have all these things to upgrade on an annual or 5-year basis, that they can help compile those numbers so we can say, this is the amount budgeted per year per site, and this is how we got
That's
there.
what he did in the past, and we used that to know that we needed to replace schools. But unlike Measure R is very much unlike Measure K, the prior Measure K, not to be confused with the future Measure K, but the prior Measure K had a variety of projects labeled under safety projects, roofing projects, but it wasn't as specific as Measure R as what we've done with our facilities, master facilities plan. When we got Measure R, we knew that the whole thing was gonna be taken with the elementary schools. That was our focus, that was really our plan, is to take our schools built in the 50s and 60s and get them where they need to be, which we did. But we would be negligent if we did not start to think about the future, because they're not gonna be under warranty more than a year, and things are gonna start to happen, and where are we gonna get that money from? We don't have a pot of money other than our capital. We have capital facilities, but that's for growth. We have our facilities fund, but like I said, most of that 9 million is already dedicated to our Measure R projects as outlined in our budget plan, which I will bring back to the board at the next meeting to review our budget for Measure R, and you'll see where we've drawn money in to make those schools happen. So we didn't have to try to remodel an old falling down decrepit school, but we could build a new. Okay.
Helen, what about things like just as simple as, like every 10 years you're supposed to repaint a wall and stuff like that? Like, I know that some of that stuff is not
That's
happening. Right. So, I mean, do we need to have this deferred maintenance fund to do that type of stuff?
Yes, and we always had a rotational system where the carpets were replaced after X amount of years, and you wouldn't do a whole school at a time. You'd start with 4 classrooms at each site and do those every year. There'd be another 4, but we haven't had that funding since we stopped putting in the 150,000. Not that 150,000 will take us very far as it used to, but it's still something. And as we stockpile it and use it responsibly, that could certainly help.
Okay. And what about just something as simple as, like, we all know, unfortunately, every once in a while we get graffiti on a school or something like that. How do we think to do that?
That's not a routine restricted maintenance, and our maintenance guys go over just, John Sweat was recently hit last week or this week? Last week. It was really bad, and pretty much all walls and trees and everything was hit, and our maintenance, our custodial, were all over there with the paint. They matched the paint the best they could, and we're putting it over temporary. So, and those buildings, most of them will be removed anyway, but still, that comes from routine restricted maintenance. We're required, if we take our total expenditures, we're required to put 3% of our total expenditures into a routine restricted maintenance account, that pays for anyone who has anything to do with maintenance, as well as the underground wiring, everything you can think of. So it's usually about 1.5 million. So.
Any other questions? Any public comments? Seeing none, this is an action item. Yep. Do a motion?
I will move to approve the 2021-22 unaudited actuals.
I'll second. Student vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 4 is CSBA conference attendance as an action item also presented by Superintendent Rossi.
Okay, so, I've added a page, if you could pull this up, I've added the last page to this document. I also wanted to start by saying, you know, we talked last board meeting about whether or not we should send 1 person, 2 person, 3, 4, whatever. I did find in our board bylaws, bylaw 9240, it's called board training. It was adopted in 2017, this update, where as you are all entrusted with the responsibility of governing district schools, the board recognizes that its members need training and that helps them understand their responsibilities, stay abreast of new developments in education, and develop boardsmanship skills. So all board members may attend conferences for this, and although board business will not be discussed, I thought it was just thrown in at the end there. So as soon as board members come back, they're to report to the board orally in writing about the in-services that they attend. So with that being said, I did make a call to a couple of, my retired superintendent and to DWK as well, and asked for advice on who should attend, because I didn't really know, should we send who we know is coming on the board, or should we predict and do all 5 here and so on and so forth. So what it came out to was that the best thing we could do was to send all 5 board members. Now, we will have the election at the beginning of November, and it doesn't matter that they haven't sworn an oath to come and sit on the board yet, but all 5 members after the election can attend and should attend. So if you go to the last page on this, I know that's hard because of the mouse, but. So what we have done, Nikki and I, we have registered all 5 board members. So Jeremy and Deirdre included, even though we know that they're not going to be on the board, but they will have a replacement in their seats. So they'll just switch the registration to their name. So we registered all 5 board members for both the conference and the pre-conference, because the pre-conference is for new board members. And then there's the next president's conference as well. And Carlos is kind of new, he hasn't quite been here a year yet, so he can go to the new, or he can opt to just go to the regular conference. If you've already attended the new, that would be up to you, but you'll work with Nikki on that. 5 rooms have been booked from Tuesday through Saturday. Now, this is not, they don't just list the hotels that you can call, you have to actually work through their booking agency. And they have no rooms available, so everybody's on a wait list. So we did some homework and we found a hotel right there, 0.21 miles from the conference center. Residents in at about the same price, just a little bit more. And we were guaranteed 5 rooms for the 5 nights. So we went ahead and booked it. It's refundable up through November 30th. So, or 20th, sorry, Nick, 20th. And they also give you free breakfast, so we don't have to worry about reimbursement for breakfast. And what I've done then is I booked January 12th as a confirmed date for a board governance workshop right here at the district office with all 5 members and myself, but we need to settle on a time. And I don't know, because it's a Thursday, and the reason we're doing it at the beginning of January is because the next date available is the end of February. And what this particular workshop does is it works on, did that move again? It's supposed to be on the last page, Dan. Okay, so this workshop focuses on board and superintendent's agreement, building trust, how to be a high-performing governance team, and kind of brings us together and puts us all on the same page right here in our own home. So I just need a time for this, and it can be a 2-hour or a 4-hour, and it could be in day, it could be in the afternoon, it could be in the evening. And I know you don't know your schedules then, and we don't know the schedules of our unknowns, but I have to book something to get it in stone for as many as can possibly be. And it's really important for us to all be on the same page, especially with new board members. And that's what I've done so far, so discussion.
Board questions?
So Helen, for someone like me, so I'll be starting my third year, which is pretty unbelievable, in December. So do you foresee that I should be attending that new board member day, because
I would think you would go to the president one.
The
to
president
learn about
one,
being
okay.
president, because you have the next amount of experience on the board. Not that you're automatically, but I think that would be a good learning opportunity. If you didn't want to go for the extra day, that could be worked out too.
Okay, and then so we know, I think we know all but one of our members is gonna be. Because one of the seats, two of the seats are not contested, right? So, the other thing I was gonna say is, like, so I will, I'll have to take time off work for my full-time job to attend this, which is totally fine. I'm happy to do that. I think it's a really good use of time for the January 12th meeting. Because of that, I would prefer to do like a late afternoon or an evening, so I don't have to take yet another day off work. It's just my 2 cents.
I understand. And airfare, in order for us to book the airfare, you have to confirm that you'll be attending with Nikki and she'll book your airfare for you.
I was gonna say the same about January 12th, especially not knowing what our new members'
Yeah.
schedules will be and not being able to ask them. Evening feels maybe safer,
Yeah.
afternoon, evening.
You said the January 12th one is a 4-hour workshop?
It could be a 2-hour, it could be a 3-hour, I can work that out depending on what time you guys are available.
Do you have a preference on that? Like the
Evening,
time?
evening as well,
Evening,
yeah.
oh, yeah. We all,
Yeah, late
we
afternoon,
all have
yeah.
full-time jobs too.
Any other questions? Public comment? All right, we'll bring back, this is an action item.
So, approved, go ahead and send the funds in.
Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve sending 5 board members to the CSBA conference in December.
Student vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. Number 5, approval of resolution 2023-07, design build contract between Martinez Unified School District and Alton Construction Company. Action item presented by Superintendent Rossi.
Sorry, Nikki, and the next time. Andy, can you pull up the scoring sheet for me? What do I have on there? I have a bunch of stuff on there.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
It's down right there where it says more.
Yeah.
Click on more.
To the right,
A little bit.
to the right.
There. Okay, so we went out for an RFP on June 16th with the tentative plans for Morella Park. We had, I think there are 3 different, we sent it out, we shortlisted 6 different construction companies. We get 3 responses back. 1 was incomplete, which left us 2 to choose from. Having met with both and worked out some arrangements in terms of some alternates and value engineering options, we came up with a contract for Alton for $17,877,025. Not to exceed. And I think with our soft costs, let's see, alternatives. This is about 20% over what we thought it would be. And that's why some of that $9 million is coming into this pot. We do have a bit of a surplus from John Muir and Las Fuentes, which is going towards this project as well. So like I said, it's about, I think originally we put about 14 something away, and we're up to, our base presents, we're up to almost 18 million. So we do have a plan for this funding, which is what I'll bring back the next time. And we can cover these expenses with our current money. So the board is being asked to approve this or adopt this resolution so we can move forward with the project slated to actually begin work next June.
What was the scope? I mean, what was the initial amount?
From our original planning, it was 14 million something.
Do we have any, is there any, money kind of like waiting to see if there's grant funding or not?
We got
From the state, we got everything from the state.
We got everything we could get. We did apply at one point for the extra costumes for kindergarten, but they were giving them to the Title I districts before they touched the rest of us. And the phase 1 project that begins next June is pretty much the parking lot. And there are more documents attached there. I think I put these documents on there, and that's why that more is there. Yeah, I'm not sure how to make that work, but I will share this at the next meeting when we talk about the money. But it's basically the redoing of the parking areas from Morella Park, which will be first, in that first summer.
Any other board questions?
These phases that are listed are obviously have dates tied to them. Is there,
Can you see this on your thing? Okay, good.
I'm actually looking at the appendix A project milestone schedule.
Yeah.
Those dates, have we correlated those with the school calendars?
Yeah.
Oh, I think we had the school calendars. I didn't know the school calendars were that.
Well, we know that we're done in this next summer. We're done in June 1st, I think. And then we don't come back until August, so the phase 1A and 1B
Okay.
are gonna be June and July. And then the next summer is the modernization and the library edition. And the new construction actually can start and can go on while the kids are at school in Orange Park. So if you wanna see the map, I'm sure it's on the big giant contract.
I haven't. Thank you.
Any other questions? Are there any public comments? All right, this is also for action. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the design build contract.
Second. Student vote?
Aye.
Full board, all in favor?
I
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. Okay, on to number 6, which is consolidated application for funding. This is an information possible action item presented tonight by Andy Cannon.
Good evening, board. Each year, we have to fill out the consolidated application, and at this time of the year, we're choosing which of those federal programs that we want to receive funding from. So tonight, we're looking at asking the board to approve our addition of Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV funds, and also including Title III immigrant funds. So the application you see in front of us is something that we will submit to the state and onto the federal government, and then we'll receive those funds. Those funds are included in our budget projections, and then we'll be using those throughout the year to pay for services for our students.
And is there a time element on this, would make it more prudent for us to take early action?
Yes, we need to take care of this tonight.
Sounds good. Are there any questions? Any more questions?
How is it, is this different, or the titles that we're going under, is this kind of the same from previous years? I don't recall seeing this before. I don't know, was your previous?
Yeah, usually it's lumped into all the things that you're doing in June. So the state was delayed in opening the application. So usually you're voting on this end of May, beginning of June. But because of that delay, we put it all the way into August. And it wasn't a delay on the school district's part, it was completely on the state, just figuring out all of the additional COVID funds and how they were authorizing a lot of the distribution of the funds that they were doing and how they were reporting in the system. So, and it's been a delay all year long, even last fall, when we were supposed to be reporting on it, that was delayed too. So the state's just catching up on a lot of extra work from the funding that they've given out.
But it's funding that we have received for a long time.
Same titles in front.
Yeah, nothing's changed.
Great, any other questions? Public comment? All right, so do we want to take action tonight? Yes, we do. So seeing 3 shakes of the head, do I have a motion?
Move to approve the consolidated application for funding.
I'll second. Is there a student vote?
Aye.
Full board, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carried. Thank you. 16.7 is January 2023 board meeting dates. It's an information item presented by Superintendent Rossi.
Can you pull up the calendar, the rough draft I put on here? So each year we have to look at our board meetings the second and fourth Monday and see if any of them fall on a holiday or so on and so forth and make adjustments. Well, I thought we were home free because Memorial Day and the Memorial Day and Thanksgiving week break don't fall into a problem this year. But our winter break does. On January 9th, we have a holiday. We don't come back to work until the 10th. So I'm asking the board for direction on whether or not they want to move the 9th to, let's say, another day during January, because if you look down in December, scroll down a little bit, Andy, if you can. In December, in November, we have 2 meetings, and in December, we have 1. If we don't do something about the January 9th meeting, we go from the beginning of December to the end of January. And I'm not sure that gives us enough time to complete everything we need to complete by the February, March 15th time. We have to have 2 meetings ahead of time. If you want to wait until we get closer to see where we are in terms of board agenda items, but we've always had 2 in January. We sometimes skip the last one in May for Memorial Day, if you remember. And just put it in if we need it on a Tuesday. We can move the 9th to the 10th if we need it, and we can decide later if we need it, or we can just go ahead and either cancel it or move it. Or have it during break.
So the 9th is a holiday for everybody, and then everybody's back over on the 10th.
Yes, the 9th is part of winter break.
Right, okay. I need to have people have to come into work for the board meeting.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think we want to have that. So,
Maybe, well, sorry, Annie.
no, well, I was just gonna say, so the
Yeah.
10th is interesting because staff is back, but students are not back.
Right.
And so, especially with board members that you don't know, I mean, sometimes people really maximize that vacation time, so I don't know if their kids don't have to be in school, or if even the 10th would be.
Could you look at something like the 17th on a Tuesday and then the 30th and move 2 days?
Yeah, or we could do the 11th or the 23rd.
The 12th is that workshop, so that would be 2 nights in a row for staff and for the board. Which I'm okay with committing myself to that, but I don't know how much we want to overwork staff 2 evenings in a row. I like the idea of potentially the 17th and 30th. I will put it on the record right now that I am not forgetting that the 17th is my husband's birthday, and he will get over it. But I know if I go home, I'm like, we have to. So I know that, and I'm also willing to do whatever's necessary, because it's a Tuesday, it's not a big birthday deal.
That does put us at those Stevens at a meeting every other week through the rest of the year. For the rest of the academic.
And this is for information tonight, right?
I'm fine either way. I'm fine with the 10th, I'm fine with the 17th. I think I'll be around, so.
17:30 combo is fine.
All right, any public comment? All right, seeing none, we will bring it back at our next meeting for action. Okay, number 8 is the MUSD equity work report. This is an information item presented today by Yadira Zapata. Hi, welcome.
Hello.
Can you pull that up?
Yeah, sure. There we go. Is it, can you hear me? Okay. All right, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me tonight. So I'm here to just kind of give an update on our equity work. Where have we been? Where are we going? If you recall, I was here about last October. So here we are again, 2 weeks in a year. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So I'm going to start by kind of reframing kind of or resharing of our framework. You'll notice a lot of the language that was shared in October. This is kind of the foundation that we've been building this work on. So acknowledging our commitment as a district to the pursuit of honoring, including and lifting all voices in our community, wanting to provide resources and learning opportunities for all of our educational partners, so staff, students, families, and community members, and building out their own tools to identify and interrupt racism, social injustice, and really bias of any kind. When we kind of dive into, okay, so how do we turn that into a reality? If you go and look down, some of the work that has been done over the last few years through the LCAP is really adding that as a big pillar in our LCAP. And so that work lives at LCAP number 5. I'll kind of leave the language, you can read it for yourselves, but really that LCAP goal is focusing on, fostering anti-racism, social justice policies, procedures, making sure that all of our students have access across the district. You can see some of our reason why there's been a lot of data over the years showing, disproportionate engagement data for students of color, whether it's disciplinary, grades, just general engagement, looking at things like the California Healthy Kids Survey. There's just been a lot of data over the years. And so wanting to really focus and hone in on that. And then again, how do we really make that work happen? How do we frame that? And so on the next slide, you can see kind of some guiding questions. So how do we take this LCAP goal and put it into practice? And so thinking about how are we going to show up every day where our students feel a sense of belonging and see themselves represented? How are inequities showing up in our district? How are we going to address those inequities? And then how do we disrupt our current inequitable practices? Moving ahead, again, really taking an approach of purposeful planning. This is incredibly important work, and so wanting to think of it as a multi-year ongoing learning journey of support and learning. Wanting to provide multiple opportunities for our staff to engage, really kind of thinking about some of the, work that Dr. Watson has provided to us and just kind of in general, thinking about really building the base. And so how do we create safe spaces for our students and building our staff's capacity to provide those spaces with a major focus, and we'll hear more about that in a minute. And then continuing to want to build, can you go back? Wanting to just build resources, and then also not just for our staff, but also our families and education. So going into kind of the where have you been, if you are looking at that presentation on your own screen, the 2020-21, up at the top, that's actually a hyperlink to a document that kind of spells out even in more detail. On this slide, it's just kind of the bullet points, but on that hyperlink document, you can kind of see the definition of what some of these things really were focused on, where this training was provided. I haven't had a chance to do that for this year, but I plan to do so. And so thinking about, looking at 2022, or 2020, starting with the board resolution that the board, passed in July, then, I'm not gonna get into too much of that, this was all shared last year, you can kind of see some of the main bullet points that have happened in the 2020-21 school year. Looking to last year, I want to acknowledge that really kind of a bulk of this work was done more in the second half of last school year as we transitioned back to in-person learning, as we kind of figured out some funding needs, et cetera. Looking at last year, we were able to launch our equity team leaders. And this group was developed and came to fruition from the trainings that had been provided by Dr. Watson. And so the previous director of Ed Services and Dr. Watson was the superintendent at that time, et cetera, had worked out these cohorts and these trainings that you can see in the previous year. And as people kind of attended and continued their training and development, that's kind of where this initial group of equity team leaders was created. Continued with a racial equity series for parents, continuing some work around grading for equity, continuing looking at curriculum considerations through Curriculum Advisory Council, even just teachers exploring it on their own. We started really thinking about a student series. That was something that we had talked about last year wanting to look into, and I'll talk more about what that's going to look like moving into this year and beyond. A couple other exciting things that happened were updating interview practices through an equity lens, so looking at the types of questions that are being asked to candidates that are applying to USC positions, and ensuring that there is some sort of like equity, diversity, inclusion type questions in those to really ensure that who are we hiring, are they representing our LCAP goal, our mission, our vision as a district. And then another big focus of the equity team leaders has been drafting and working on an MUSC diversity, equity, and inclusion plan, and I'll show you a little sneak peek of what that is looking like so far. So thinking about where are we going now, and so kind of tonight I want to kind of highlight three major frames. So our DEI, or diversity, equity, inclusion plan, some student leadership opportunities, and then a grant that was announced by the California Department of Education, the anti-bias grant, and kind of where USD is in that process. So looking ahead, so the equity team leaders have, starting in the second half of the year and then getting together at the beginning of summer to start drafting our own plan. We've actually looked at plans of neighboring districts. It's kind of a little bit of like a guiding post of what are other districts looking at, kind of how are they framing this, just kind of help guide our conversations. And so the team identified the following focus areas: so structures and systems, curriculum, staff diversity and professional development, culture and climate, and then community engagement. And so the plan is looking at, the team is still developing and refining. Those are our categories, but then within the categories, really identifying what are specific action items. What are things within these focus areas that we need to tackle and work on to really, get this work done and really support all of our students and staff. Looking at the timeline for them, so it's actionable, there's a timeline to it. Who are responsible parties? So who are we collaborating with? Is this something that is happening, in collaboration with the board? Is this something that's happening in collaboration with students? Is this something that's happening in collaboration with community partnerships, et cetera? And then also looking at measures. How are we going to measure if these action items are being successful, if they're, we're seeing the improvement or the growth that we want to see. And so really trying to be, again, very purposeful and very specific with our intentions. The goal is to finalize that draft by October, November. We actually have a meeting later this week where we're going to kind of go back into the draft and continue to work. That's our second meeting this year where we kind of focused on that. And then from there, it'll be going out to our educational partners. So our teachers, our board, our community members about, here's kind of the draft and engaging in some feedback. We also acknowledge that, our plan is going to be a little bit of a evolving, living, breathing document as we identify further needs, as we kind of address them that might be, some like low hanging fruit and start tackling bigger things. Of course, we would always come back and make updates as needed. And so on the next slide, you can kind of see a sneak peek of kind of the structure of it. And so at the top, you'll see what is the focus area, what is the goal, and then the action, the timeline, the responsible party, and then the measure. So one that I just kind of snapshot for you tonight is culture and climate. So our goal is that in recognizing that an inclusive community or climate and culture is essential to students' well-being. We want to build anti-bias and anti-racist culture and a climate that promotes belonging, equity, and respect. And so an action item in there would be providing opportunities for student voice, student training to deepen their own understanding of equity, diversity, and inclusion. The timeline right now is ongoing. As we kind of drill down, there'll be some more specific timelines in there. Responsible parties would be educational services, our district equity team, and then students eventually to guide as that work launches. Then however, students also, being engaged in as a responsible party. Measures of those would be SLAM participation, I'll discuss that in a moment, surveys through those who are actively participating, and then climate surveys for like the entire staff or the entire school and student body. And so those are things that we are still looking to pinpoint and identify, and things like the surveys are things that we're going to be building and creating as well. So that's kind of the DEI plan. From there, looking at student leadership and student learning, we started kind of this exploration of the SLAM program, it's Student Leaders Anti-Racist Movement, and it's a 3-year program. The first year is training staff members. On the equity team leader team, there are about 4 high school teachers and also some representation from the junior high. And the goal is to start with secondary, so 6-12. The staff members at the high school have already kind of started planting the seed, to my understanding. That was kind of the last thing that we discussed. And what staff would be interested in participating in this, getting the training, helping lead this work, helping provide that space for our students. After our staff is trained, then it'll turn into now, how do we open this up to the students? Students will go through their own training. The first year of training is knowing how or learning how to engage in conversations about race and identity, then articulating their own learning, and then finally starting to lead work on their own campuses. Right now, like I said, the goal is to launch, sometime January, February with the teachers and kind of roll into it from there with the students. And then historically, this SLAM was primarily focused on 9-12. The facilitator had shared that they started doing some middle school work and really, saw the impact, and that students at the 6-8 level were also really ready for it and engaging in really amazing high levels. And so that's kind of our goal too, is to start at 6-12. And then of course, then thinking about, well, what about TK5? Like how do we engage students at an age appropriate level as well, to build that capacity at the elementary level too. The last piece I was going to share tonight is to kind of help support this work is the anti-bias grant. So this summer in July, the CDE announced the anti-bias grant, and the focus is to eliminate and prevent and address any bias of any kind that your school, your district deems necessary. It is a one-time allotment that will be announced in January. And then you have from January 2023 until the end of the fiscal year in 2026 to spend that money. What the CDE has announced is that districts that apply will receive a minimum of $75,000 or a maximum of $200,000 over that entire span. So it won't be a yearly influx. That's how much money you have, and you have 5 years to spend it. We have applied, and UC has applied for. Has completed the application and requested the maximum, which is $200,000. And to think, when thinking about how is that money going to be spent, it's going to be focused on the student leadership program, so SLAM, ideally, And then also thinking about how do we scale this work to also address additional biases that are, necessary and important to address in our district. And so one of the pillars that we had kind of identified, there's been a major focus on racial equity, and that will continue to be a big driving force, but also looking to start building in training and learning capacity around addressing biases against gender identity, sexual orientation, etc. And then taking that same approach. So how do we engage our students? How do we engage our staff? How do we engage our community? That second bullet point, which is the gender identity, that is still a piece that's being developed. We're going to be actively looking for community partners, community organizations to support that work. There was some work that started this summer as part of the August PD days. All staff participated in a training by Dora Dome around what does the law say, what are protections, and so kind of building off of that and deepening that learning. And then another focus will be really working on that DEI plan to make sure that it's being monitored, it's being implemented, it's being revised and worked on throughout. Mary said that it was announced in January. My ear is like clogged all of a sudden. There it is. It's like an echo. And I think those are the big things. One thing I just realized I forgot to mention about the DEI plan is the focus on community engagement. I also just wanted to take tonight to really give a shout out to John Muir Elementary and the John Muir Elementary DEI parent group. That is something that kind of has evolved over the last few years. I haven't had a chance to go myself, but we have representation from John Muir on the equity team leaders. We've had a chance to hear about the awesome work that the parent group is doing there, and so that's really exciting. As we think about how do we continue to engage our community, our parent community, and looking to partner with them as well as a lot of other groups in terms of how are we building capacity district-wide, community-wide, and all are kind of working simultaneously to continue this important work. I think that's the gist. And then on the final slide, I did include a terms to know. Sometimes we talk in a lot of jargon. And so for mostly, not necessarily for the board, but anyone who's accessing that presentation online, there's some acronyms that I defined of what that means. Just wanting to make sure that people aren't, what the heck is DOE and have no idea what I'm talking about. So I just wanted to point that out tonight as well. All right, there was a lot of talking on my end. So I'll pause for questions.
Great, thank you. Thanks for coming in and doing the presentation again. That definitely shows a commitment to it, and the work is ongoing, so I really appreciate that. Are there any more questions?
Thank you for coming in, thank you for the presentation. I'm kind of curious if there's any feedback, and the correspondence letter today kind of touched on it from Mr. Bellini, is the low participation with the Dr. Watson series. I participated in one of them, and I think there was 12 people, and I don't know if there's feedback from either Dr. Watson or people that participated or the sites as to why there's such a lack of interest or just participating. I don't know if it was a virtual environment or if it was not a big concern to some of the groups. So is there any insight into that investment?
So no formal data that I can share tonight, but in the first year that the parent series launched, was 2020-21, there was much greater participation. And then last year, I don't know if it was Zoom fatigue or Google Meet fatigue. I think there was a piece in, trying to advertise it as much as possible. I think those are all things that are definitely an important consideration for this year and moving forward about how do we build out those community engagements in a way that is going to be, well publicized, accessible to all, providing any kind of needs that are necessary. We did provide translation services in Spanish for the Dr. Watson series, but thinking about what are some other maybe barriers to access or participation that we would want to actively think about and address as we move forward.
One other question, and this goes back to the little snippet that you provided for the DEI. the action item to provide opportunities for student voice and student training to support deeper understanding. While it is an action item, it seems very open-ended, not very, quantifiable. And is there an opportunity or way to kind of really capitalize on participation or the number of opportunities or how that's going to roll out so it's not so ambiguous?
Yes, I mean, that's definitely very good feedback. I would say two things to that. The first piece is these are still in draft form. We have a few meetings coming up where we can really drill down on that, and as we've kind of been, dissecting more, taking some time away from it, coming back to it, these are questions that we've kind of been coming up with ourselves. Even the language, right? Like whether it's provide an opportunity or what is the language that's more like specific and actionable. And then, I think in terms of where that, where we would be collecting the data is more in the measure, right? So what is that participation data? What kind of questions are we creating and looking at? I think those would definitely be in consideration there. I also think there's something to say too about, I think that while this work is new, I think it's work that students have been seeking and wanting for a long time. And even if it's 30 students that are in the first wave of this, I think it's 30 more that have an opportunity now that they haven't had before. So I think finding that balance, right, of wanting to ensure that, we're getting high participation, high engagement, to see the change that we want to see across our campuses and our community, and if I really want to get corny, like in our world, but also like acknowledging that we have to start somewhere too. So where's that balance?
I just wanted to, again, thanks, and thanks for the shout out to John Muir Elementary, their PTA committee. They are doing a lot of really great things. I know that they're hoping to do some sort of event next month for LGBT History Month, so hopefully we'll have more info to share about that. And I'll save the rest of what I wanted to say for the end of the meeting.
So I will say also a little bit about the JME DEI, and that they are also doing something right now for Latinx month, and it's not 1 month, but it spans September to October. So it's starting this week, and they all parents were sent out an email regarding some activities that they have planned and how some funds are being spent to purchase some books for individual teacher libraries, and it's really cool the things that they're doing. They're creating in collaboration with the teachers some lesson plans that can be changed for each group and modified, and so that teachers can kind of just like a little grab bag of small lessons that they can do throughout the month. So they do have some activities planned for that too. And yeah, it's definitely grown year over year, so it's really cool to see that very organic movement taking place in one of our schools.
Any other questions? Any public comments? All right, well, this was just an informational item. Thank you so much for putting that together for us. All right, our next number is 16.9, which is review of a new job description, student services technician. This is an information only item presented by Janelle.
Good evening. Tonight we're bringing forward for your information a new job description of student services technician. And this job description has been developed in response to the changes within the student services department, which to more accurately reflect the variety of technical and complex duties in managing district-wide student services. This position supports both the student services and special education programs within our department, and we felt that the position was required to be revised and upgraded to a technician level rather than a secretary.
Any more questions? Public comment? All right, this was for information. Thank you for that. We'll see it on our next for action item, right, at our next meeting. Number 16.10 is Vicente Martinez, high school graduation credits modifications, also for information only, and it's presented by Amy Nichols.
Thank you. Thank you. Tonight I'm bringing forward information for a recommendation and revision to board policy 6446.1 regarding graduation requirements for Vicente Martinez High School students.
It's okay.
So under board policy 6446.1, students need 210 credits to graduate from Vicente Martinez High School, including the core requirements listed above. California, to receive a high school diploma, students must fulfill the state and district recommendations, which you see up here. Current Vicente Martinez graduation rates and dropout rates from 2019 through 2022 are listed above. As you can see, we saw an increased rate of graduation from 21 to 22 at 80.94% under AB 104. The CBE allowed students to complete the minimum requirements of 140 credits and pass the additional LEA required credits, exempting them for graduation requirements. Under this, we saw increased graduation rates along with decreased dropout rates. Listed here is just surrounding district data regarding graduation requirements. As you can see, graduation requirements for the comprehensive high school and continuation or alternative high schools are listed, and they do vary. What we see mostly here is that the comprehensive high school and the continuation high school or alternative high school typically is anywhere from 20 to 30 credits less to graduate, and mostly in the area of electives is it reduced. Martinez also has in board policy that students must take 10 credits of lifelong learning in the area of electives, which still is the only district surrounding right now that still has this requirement. In fall of 2020, Alhambra High School reduced their graduation requirement credits from 240 to 220 in the area of electives. And at this point in time, Vicente Martinez High School is only 10 credits less than Alhambra High School from the comprehensive high school graduation credits. While we're looking at the lifelong learning requirement that students need to meet, it's thought that this requirement can be met through our CTE pathways or work-based learning to help students access this material through electives. Current challenges that we see for students at Vicente Martinez High School to meet graduation requirements. We have 4.2 staff members, and staff members are teaching the core graduation requirements along with master scheduling. We have senior year requirements that are known as singletons when we're doing that master schedule. Teachers are currently at their MEA contractual number of courses or preps, so they're allowed to teach 3 courses. We only offer one section of art. We show Katie Collins, who's amazing with Martinez Junior High School, so she teaches one section for us. And so the big challenge is the remainder of our elective courses are available through students mostly on the Ingenuity platform. So looking at reducing credit requirements in the area of electives doesn't necessarily affect any teacher staffing. It affects students being on the Ingenuity platform. This is just some data regarding the number of students this looking at this board policy would affect. So our current enrollment right now for 12th grade is 29 students, and we do see an influx of enrollment after the first semester. We will have students moving back and forth between the 2 schools. So if we are looking to make a revision for consideration, at this point in time, it would only impact 18 students, but typically, as you can see, that number will increase for the 23-24 school year as we have students enrolling over. If we look at our credit projections for the end of this school year, for our 12th grade students at this point in time, we have 14 students are on track to graduate at the 210 credits. If we were to move that to 190, we would be able to graduate an additional 15 students. And of those students right now, we have 16 students that are falling short of 30 plus elective credits. If we look at our 8th graders right now, we only have 2 students that are on track to graduate at the 210 credits. And if we moved it down to 190, we would be able to graduate an additional 16 students. So just overall benefits to students, we reduce the credit requirement to 190. It would increase our graduation rates and reduce our dropout rates. It would address social and emotional wellness and feelings of academic success. Often when students come to us, they haven't been successful in school. And so having them see that they're moving through the credits and working towards graduation would increase their emotional wellness and feeling of success. And we would really be able to support students' learning of the core requirements in English, math, history, so they could focus on those classes instead of focusing on those classes in addition to extra electives. So the other thing that we would be able to bring if we were focusing on this as well is their participation in work-based learning. So just a recommendation for board consideration would be updating board policy 6146.1, the high school graduation requirements to 190 and removing the lifelong learning class requirements effective for the 23-24 school.
Thank you. Are there any more questions on this?
Amy, can you, I'm not really clear what the lifelong learning, can you talk a little bit more about that? And is that a requirement at Alhambra based also?
No, it is not a requirement at Alhambra. It's just if I send it. It does also pose an issue for students who are moving between the two schools because it does require a year-long course. And so if the student comes over mid-semester, like they're going to graduate or hoping to graduate from Vicente, it does pose a problem. So the lifelong learning class provides information and skills necessary to prepare students to find a job, continuing education, living on their own, skills, knowledge, and attitude towards living in the adult world.
I mean, that sounds useful. It sounds like it would be useful to all of our students. Why is that offered at, why is that a requirement at Vicente and not at Alhambra?
I'm not sure. It's in board policy. My guess would be in the past, maybe that was a requirement, or the CTE pathways that we built and other work-based learning opportunities. That feels more relevant to what our students need to be successful, to acquire jobs, to graduate, and move on to be successful adults. I'm not exactly sure why it was in board policy, if anybody knows historical. Yeah.
I wasn't paying attention.
And so if we reduce the graduation requirement by 20 credits, is that just two one semester classes? Is that, am I doing the math right?
It would be 3 classes, 3 year-long classes in the area of electives.
Okay. What type of, I mean, it seems like, I always think that things like art and music and all of those things are very valuable to a well-rounded education. Is that the type of stuff that they're doing on Ingenuity?
So we offer the one art class that's taught on campus, and I will say that our 16 students enrolled in it. It's our biggest class, and students do love the hands-on opportunity. But the other classes that students are enrolled in for electives are other forms of health, other forms of psychology. We do offer a couple, there's a business entrepreneur class that is through the CT pathway that is an interest to kids. So there are electives that are offered, but they aren't as, I would say, hands-on as what you could receive in a comprehensive high school.
Do you have any sense of like, because it seems like since they're online that maybe access is not the issue. Is it more interest? Like there are things that the kids just aren't interested in?
And I would say a little bit of both, but I think the biggest issue is when they come at this point in time, they've already not passed credits and they're now credit deficient. So they're on Ingenuity taking credit recovery classes in addition to taking their core requirements. So taking their 5 classes that they need to be a junior or senior. On top of that, they're also having to take potentially a semester of English, a semester of math, a semester of history. So when you combine the 5 core classes, plus you combine the credit recovery classes, and then on top of that electives, it becomes very overwhelming for the number of courses that a student needs to complete to reach graduation requirements.
Okay, that makes sense, thanks.
I'm curious to know what what are the projections of having more kids transfer into Vicente because it just got easier to graduate?
I don't have those projections. I would say that any student that's in a credit recovery situation would be eligible to graduate, with less credits if they moved over.
And Vicente is already 10 credits less than Alhambra. And it seemed from what I experienced at the graduation, there's a little bit of a difference of opinion between the two high schools and their respective attitudes, or one towards the other. And I hate the idea of saying, hey, let's just make it easier for you and exacerbate that disconnect. I'd rather maintain the credits and figure out ways to engage them and make the opportunities more available, rather than just say we don't need them anymore.
I feel like I have a little bit of a counter view on that, which is if we are graduating more students and they are finding success, now they have a high school diploma, which is going to allow them to get a job that they couldn't get without that, and to be continuing to feel like they have success. If we continue to make it more difficult for kids to graduate, you have kids who are part of this cycle of feeling like they are failing, and that makes future opportunities harder for them. So I think we're not necessarily, I don't think, it's not like a kid from Alhambra could just say, oh, it's easier, so I want to go there. I mean, to Ms. Nichols' point, it's kids who have already struggled a great deal and are finding themselves in a situation where they're needing that support to even just recover the credits. So I don't know that this is a student who is going to benefit wildly from 20 additional electives credits. What I think they will really benefit from in their life is knowing that they can succeed and getting their high school diploma.
My question is there are we planning to take lifelong learning off the menu of choices, or is it something that it could continue to still be offered as an option for students?
It's something that could continue to be offered to students, but I think removing the year-long lifelong learning requirement would then open more opportunity for students to graduate, especially those that maybe would transfer over the semester before they graduate because they aren't able to meet that year-long requirement.
Any other board questions?
I still feel like we're failing them by not giving them opportunities, rather than just deleting it and saying, here, make it easier to graduate. Is there not an opportunity to expand or utilize the CTE courses or some of those for in lieu of the lifelong, and give them opportunity to advance a position?
Yes, and I think the thought in reducing the 30 credits in the area of electives would also, 20 credits would also give them the opportunity to hopefully focus more in on some of those pathways. And open some of those opportunities instead of having to take a variety of electives, focusing on some of those pathways and the job work-based experience or the lifelong learning.
So understand what you just said, is it better to restructure the requirements and get rid of the 50 electives, or redistribute the 50 electives for lifelong learning and make available other alternatives and not drop the extra 10 units credits? Or sorry, go down to the 190?
Repeat the question.
If we restructure the requirements for graduation and redistribute the 50 elective credits, including the 2 semesters of lifelong learning, and restructure it to engage, whether it be CTE or some other pathway, and maintain the credit requirement, would that still meet the objective of improving and giving opportunities to the students?
Can I respond? I think the challenge is our students who are attending Vicente are struggling with credit recovery and meeting their credit requirements for their core classes. And so when students have this number of elective classes, that's what's prohibiting them from earning their high school diploma. So it's not a matter of distributing the type of elective or which electives we're offering, but it's how many electives we're requiring them to take in order to earn their diploma. So by reducing, we're proposing a reduction of 20 units, which is 2 classes, 2 year-long classes, which would include the lifelong learning class in order to improve our students' access to their diploma so that they have the opportunity to participate in a pathway, participate in the work-based learning opportunities that we're providing, or whatever elective they might want to pursue. But the main focus for them really is to have the opportunity and time to get that credit recovery for those English classes or those math classes that they were not successful in at Alhambra and now need to retake. Because it's the electives that are getting in the way of them meeting the high school graduation requirements.
The electives and the lifelong learning, because if they have to have a year and they don't get there till their second semester senior year, they're not gonna get a diploma.
Any more questions? Any public comments? All right, unless there's any further discussion, thank you for the presentation. This is an information item that we'll be seeing on a future agenda item for action. All right, well, that gets us to the end of our meeting this evening. Are there any further comments from the superintendent, board members, or discussions about future agenda items?
Two things I wanted to say, going back to the equity piece, I wanted to say, I don't know if you all recall when we had our the pride flag resolution on the agenda last spring, some members of the Rainbow Community Center board came and spoke, and they're actually having an open house for their new community center in Concord on September 24th from 12 to 3, so I'm gonna head over there after the MEF run. So I wanted to share that, and I also wanted to just say that in the last couple of days, I've had the opportunity to look at the superintendent newsletter from Helen, Principal Emmendorfer's newsletter at AHS, the MPE principal's newsletter, and the College and Career newsletter. So it's been lots of newsletters, but I have been impressed by all of them. Our admin team is just, I think, doing a great job of communicating and sharing what's going on at their site. So I wanted to thank everybody for that.
Anyone else? All right, anything from you, Helen?
No, I'm good.
All right, well, with that, thank you, everyone. Welcome again to Martinez Unified, and we will adjourn. Do we need to sign first?
Yes. Everybody has to sign. Oh my gosh. No.
Andy did a wonderful job.
Almost over.